Hey, I'm Tom.
And I'm John.
And we're the co-founders of Hanson Frank Illustration Agency.
In this series, we'll be sitting down and talking to our illustrators, finding out more about them, their artistic process, and the creative industry we work in.
Welcome to our podcast. Today's guest is Jean Jullien. He's a French artist that we've been working with for over 8 years now.
Okay, disclaimer time. The conversation you're about to hear was actually recorded back in December 2019. Part busyness, part laziness. It's taken us a while to put this together.
And to set the scene, we've got Jean's studio's beautiful space next to the Saint Martin Canal in Paris. We'd got up early to head over there. And when you walk into the room, you've got paint splats all over the wall. There's artist material lying around everywhere. It's a real creative space for Jean to create his paintings.
We talked about his move from London, his newfound love of painting, and how social media has influenced and changed his work over the years. We hope you enjoy the conversation.
But now here we are in Paris, next to the canal, in a beautiful studio, surrounded by Jean Jullien's paintings, which you may well have seen online, and they're a lot bigger in person. I think the one behind you is, 8 foot wide?
Metric system, mate. So it'd be 2 meter 50. This one.
Yeah.
Yeah. I need to roll it. And
How long did that take?
couple of days.
And that's quite your other style, with the brush pen.
Yeah.
That's kind of super quick in comparison, isn't it?
It is, but it's funny because, for me, the pace of it's got nothing to do with the level of accomplishment or detail that I want. I've actually still, and that's something that I got since drawing, I still value the raw aspect of the brush and the energy in a way.
It must be nice to slow down.
It is, but it's more of an intellectual slowing down with painting, which came with a lot of different things like fatherhood and a certain tiredness, or just, I don't know, mid-30s, call it mid-30s. But it's the same person doing it and much of the same ideas behind it. It's just a different translation of it.
Nice.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, I think we'll come back to the painting because it's something we want to talk to you about. But tell us about why you're in Paris now and why you've moved here. And
We're in Paris because I moved to London in 2005, I believe, and I stayed for 13 years. I did all my studies there. I met my wife, had kids, the whole thing, and I just felt homesick. That's the best way to describe it. But also felt that the life I had in London that I really, really loved corresponded to the reasons why I loved it at the time wasn't there anymore for me, or I was in a different place, and I needed to start anew in a way.
Time to go. And how's the move been?
Fantastic. It totally feels like what I wanted it to feel, and it feels like I'm where I want to be. I've got a different energy. I'm quite inspired by novelty, and funnily enough, a lot of our friends who were there in London moved to Paris at the same time, so I feel like I haven't really lost everything that I loved about London, which is lovely.
Been quite a few artists have moved to Barcelona as well.
Yeah, I heard.
From London.
That would be more difficult of a sale for me, but with my family. Yeah, very good weather.
There's been, I remember people sort of say to me, to make it in the industry, you have to be like in London or one of the main cities. But
it might have been the case at some point.
Yeah, it's not the case now.
But times are changing as well. I think like you can communicate the same way from everywhere.
Yeah.
You might have less of a face-to-face client time, but again, that's not always a necessity.
It's not always a bad thing.
Exactly.
What I love about illustration industry is that you can do it anywhere. The client can be on one side of the world,
For sure.
illustrator on the other. It's so incredibly sort of versatile.
Yeah.
But compared to, let's say, photography, which is more location specific, whether you're photographing a model or whether the photographer is, illustrators can kind of go anywhere and take their laptop or their paintbrushes.
That's a nice thing about it, for
Yeah,
sure.
Really, really good.
but you also get I think you get a different production if you're from a remote location. And like personally, the work I was doing in humorous illustration when I was in London was very inspired by the people around me and a certain urban aspect to it. And when I stopped feeling the way I did, and I started looking elsewhere, I started producing work that was a little bit different. I think when an illustrator that will move away will be able to communicate as accurately, but whether it's an obvious and conscious choice or not, there will be something, a bit of a difference, which everybody can benefit from. When I see the work from an illustrator from Japan or Korea, he's able to communicate with me as if he was in the same city, but if you dig a bit deeper, there's a nice underlayer of difference that I really appreciate.
Yeah.
Go on.
No, we see it as well when our illustrators travel. Even 2 or 3 weeks somewhere seems to reset people creatively.
Totally.
And they come back and you see that in their work.
Totally.
Yeah, the beauty of travel.
I'd say your paintings are a lot more inspired by your travels.
Yeah, for sure. Travels, and I hate the word nostalgia because there's something a bit okay boomer about it. But I've been looking at stuff that really made me feel strongly, and quite often it's stuff from my past when I was a kid, or I don't know, memories and things like that, and the intensity of that feeling. Like the Madeleine in Proust is something that I'm quite interested, not because of nostalgia, because I think there's a time link that I'm excited. Instead of always trying to come up with new, I like the idea of looking back and doing a sort of cultural digestion and regurgitation. And I don't know, there's things that I feel I have not explored, and I'm looking at things with a different mind as I did before, and you have to know where you're from to know where you're going, and I guess that's also what started the painting, and I don't think it's any less relevant than the illustration that I did, and it's actually, I think it participates in exactly the same practice, but it comes from a slightly different place originally.
So the scenes that you're painting, are they imagined, or are they?
No, most of them are from photos or memories or mix.
And are you? Because I've never seen any of your photographic stuff. Are you a big photographer?
Not at all. No. It's only for. Well, it's basically I could draw quickly. I paint fairly quick, but I couldn't paint quick enough so that when I'm somewhere and I'm like, oh, this is amazing, I'd love to paint that.
Capture it.
So you just get. So my photography is more pragmatic and utilitarian, let's say. But also love the fact that when it's a crappy photo, you're already, the job is more cut to you than if it's a nice photo in a way, because you have less information. So the work of translating reality into science is already halfway there, because the machine has translated some elements of reality into pixels or things like that. So we were talking about that with my friend Jan Lebec, and we were looking at some of the photographs I was using for some new paintings, and the one that he was really loving the most were the really blurry close-up ones, because like, well, that's amazing, that already looks like something of a painting.
I think we've something about digital photography and the way that technology has gone, and also something to do with the way that people want to always show their best photographs and their best life, if you like, on Instagram. Something's been lost, hasn't it, in those errors. We don't see those crap photos anymore. You don't see.
I'm all about the errors.
Yeah.
I've always been with illustration. That's what started my illustration work as well. Just not being able to achieve detail or accuracy, and then thinking, okay, do you know what? It doesn't matter. Like, I know my limitations, so if I want to communicate something, I'll stick to how I know how to do it. More minimal, more raw, more direct, and that's how I did illustration, and that's kind of where I'm coming from for painting as well. Even though painting started because I felt like there was a certain glass ceiling with what I could do with illustration. You know, it was more often than not, it was a close-up of a character doing a specific action that was there to provoke a specific reaction from the viewer, laughter or cynicism or whatever. Whether with painting, I realized there were things that I wanted to tell on a bigger scale, scenes, moments, and less of a direct reaction and more of a mood or a feeling. And I was interested in seeing the duplicity of feelings that one image could create in the viewer. And that's something that seems to be able to do more with painting than with drawing. And the reaction I get from people is totally different. I still draw as much as I did, and I still want to keep on having my illustration. But it's really nice to see the difference of reaction. There's something very sentimental about the way people appreciate some of the paintings.
That's interesting. So you felt you'd reached, rather than you were bored of what you were doing with illustration?
No, at all bored.
It was more that you felt you'd reached a limit in terms of what you could communicate. Yeah,
I always knew there was limitations in what I could do, but I really enjoyed the theatrical aspect of the illustration, trying to tell something with very few elements. But then I felt like there was a limit to what I could personally articulate, and yeah.
And do you feel that people have, because I think sometimes people like to put other people and artists or musicians in a box, and they're comfortable with them doing what they do and what they know them for. And then sometimes, again, this analogy works well with music, but if a band suddenly starts playing a different style of music, or there's an album which is totally different, people don't like that, they feel a bit uncomfortable.
That's tricky as well, for sure.
And do you feel people have welcomed your move, or do you feel people have thought, well, this guy's not a painter,
I'm not a painter, I just do painting. But I could do, it's something that I did think about. I guess also I was using social media actively at a certain time in my life, and comical illustrations about daily life, and the reactivity that it triggers in the audience is a certain way, because it's more direct image and it's about more precise moments that you describe. So it's hit or miss, but it's quite quick. Paintings definitely is slower, and it triggers different people, different kinds of reactions. So I think in a click and likes focus, it could be unsettling, and that's something that used to question me. But as I would, Christoph Niemann did a really nice post about that a few days ago, saying that it's difficult sometimes to make yourself not see the artistic value of an image based on the likes and clicks. And I think paintings get less likes and clicks than an illustration, but for me it means more. And actually, when I do a show, the reaction that I get, also where it's taking me in my career, is not read in likes and clicks.
So, I mean,
I'm explaining that in a very circumvented way.
I want to go back a little bit, because I think you were one of the first people to kind of recognise the fact that certainly Instagram had the potential to comment very quickly on news and culture, and you were quite prolific. I mean,
for sure.
There was a time where something big would happen in the news, and you'd comment on it for a few hours.
Yeah.
Do you miss that kind of instant reaction? Because instantly you don't miss that at all?
No, I don't miss that at all. I totally acknowledge it, and I mean, social media definitely helped me have a career. Like, I don't think I would have been able to do all the projects that I've done without it. So I'm super grateful. But I think, like I said earlier, it corresponded with a time in my life, and I also feel like, even though I still enjoy doing it, sometimes I want to do a post about the Monday morning dread of the work, or the Friday going for drinks, but I feel like I've done it so much. And I do question it, because when I do it, people still love it, but I feel like I'm repeating myself, and sometimes it's okay. But overall, I felt like the language that was super successful at the time and that I was maybe embracing, I just didn't feel the same way about it. You grow or change, and that's okay. I think I'm really glad with the way it's all happened now that I'm doing painting and reflecting on it, but it just feels like a different practice and a different time. But at the same time, I still enjoy doing drawing and I still enjoy reacting.
I guess that was your starting point.
It feels less natural.
The intention was kind of a byproduct. But I think it must be addictive for people. It must be hard to give up in a way.
It is addictive, and actually it's also weird. You get a certain stage fright sometimes.
Yeah, how's this one going to go down?
Yeah, and like you don't really know where it can, how far it can go down. That's happened to me a couple of times, and it's difficult to deal with. And I guess I'm more cautious.
Do you think as well, I think we're probably when you're at the height of that phase of putting stuff on Instagram quite frequently, we're at a slightly different time now, kind of with political correctness and
yeah, for sure.
You know, there's a lot of people being held up and held accountable for things. And
is this the boomer moment?
Well, no, yeah, I think it might be. But I'm just interested to know if that's one of the reasons you stepped away from it a little bit, because you feel there's less.
No, because to be fair, like I was never as corrosive as like a Joan Cornella or people like that who are very good at what they do in doing an extremely cynical and sort of aggressive and shocking kind of humor. Mine was always more tamed and I'm fine with that because you know I'm not someone that likes conflict, so I'm very happy if I can make people laugh with nice things, as long as it's not too nice. But I don't think it was my credo to try to shock people or break taboos. However, I'm opening my ears as to people's reaction to this certain political correctness, but I don't know if it's not. I think it's probably just us getting older, and we're traveling more through time than the younger generation because we've been young and we're less young. They're young, and I guess it's always a history repeating. You know, when they'll be 45, 50, they'll be shocked and appalled at what can and cannot be said. And overall, we're also seeing a massive progress in LGBTQ acknowledgement and the rights of people. And I think socially we're evolving a better way in accepting each other, but we have to do that in a way that's unsettling for us because we feel like we can say less stuff. And I don't know, I think when you see the work of like people like Joan Cornella, whether you like it or not, he's still doing horrendous image that break all taboos, and it's working. People embrace him a lot. So, you know, yes, you can say as much stuff. You will get back. I guess the thing is like, I think you can say as much as you ever can. You just have to have the shoulders to deal with the repercussions. Yeah. But there's always been people shocking people, you know. If you look at the band from the 70s, from like, I don't know, or before that, the Velvet, the Pink Floyd, all these bands at some point were considered horrendous and breaking taboos, and
they used it as a way to find an audience ultimately.
Yeah. And I think there's always a way. We will always be able to say stuff. I mean, I hope so at least. But you just say it differently, and there are things that are not shocking now that will be shocking later, I guess. What do you think about that? Do you think that we can't say as much as we could?
No. I mean, I do feel. I mean, I think everybody at the back of their mind thinks, "Shit, I don't want to be cancelled." So
yeah, there is definitely that thing of being cancelled, and that's terrifying for sure. Because the idea that your entire life work or persona can be cancelled with the reaction of like one guy at the other end of the world who doesn't know you, doesn't know probably anything about the problematic, just has a misinterpretation or reaction, and then boom, that destroys your life. That's terrifying for sure.
But I think it is overall pushing us in the right direction, like you say. It is progress. It's not an easy.
The trick is not alienating one another and not having to pick sides between the how do you call that, the snowflakes and the other ones, the like hardcore. You know, you don't want to be. It's like snowflakes versus boomers. If that's the language, I don't want to have to pick a side.
No, it's not a good place to be.
I don't want to offend people, but at the same time, I care about freedom of speech, and I think there's definitely a way to achieve both.
There is, and I think ultimately, if we all think a little bit more before we speak. Maybe that's not a bad thing.
Yeah, but isn't that we've always been taught?
No,
I guess
absolutely.
the difference for me is the fact that we've been handed social media as a new product without potentially, or I don't think we've been told about the magnitude of the tool, of the effect. I don't think anyone could anticipate how phenomenally changing it could be for society. I mean, we've seen it. It definitely changed the face of the world. But nobody told us that at the beginning. You know, people told you, there's that stuff, MySpace. Why don't you put all of your live photos and start promoting your work and stuff? And who would have anticipated that like 10, 15 years later, something you would have posted when you were a student, not thinking much about, thinking you're just going to send information to your friends, would be blown back in your face, make you lose your job, or be the subject of a social debate. Nobody told us that.
The thing with your work though is you've always, as you say, you've always done it in a way that will make people smile.
Well, yeah.
Which is a great thing for work to do. You're not creating work to be controversial.
No.
And that's when I think it goes wrong. But you did.
It can go wrong, but it's also like, see something like Taxi Driver, probably created to be shocking, but not in a hollow way, and it changed a lot of things socially as well. So if you do it with intelligence, shocking can be extremely effective. It's just if you do it just to be shocking and to be successful, then of course, yeah.
But you did touch on it briefly, is that the way that Instagram can effectively influence what you're going to draw based on the response it's going to get online. And that's not the right way of looking at things.
It's not, but I think it's
It's good that you've been able to break that mold and just be like, no, I'm going to draw what I want to draw, or paint what I want to paint.
But one would argue that that's in terms of likes and clicks, it's less successful.
Yeah, but why?
But that doesn't matter.
That's my point. We shouldn't judge.
No, but you do judge inherently when you're faced with. If you're playing tennis, if someone you enjoy it a lot, but if someone can tell you how great you're doing, you might want to hear it. And Instagram is that, so it's addictive. It's a bit of it's tricky. You shouldn't care about it, but you have to fight your common sense.
And I'm just thinking, in terms of your studio setup, you're sharing the studio with someone else?
Yeah, with a friend currently.
Because I mean, I know quite a few artists these days who they just have their space on their own, and I think I would be right in saying you've always had a shared space. Yeah, always. And that's really important, right?
I've always loved the contact of people.
Yeah. There's this kind of over the years, the whole sort of working independently, being able to say, oh yeah, I work from home, or whatever, has become a bit of a success story in its own right. But it can be quite negative because you end up just being stuck on your own room.
I can't do that, man.
And I mean, John and I, we work from home, and I say it's great 90% of the time. And then there's that 10% where it's just crushingly depressing, and you're just like, I'm on my own. So basically, I just find it quite interesting that you've kind of, is there a reason why you've always wanted to share a creative space with people? Is it for feedback, or?
I'd just be bored of my own company. I hate silence, for one. I just can't deal with silence. My friends often take the piece of me saying I can't be alone. It's true. And I don't know, it's the energy, when you're with people, they talk about stuff, you exchange stuff, it's never boring, supposedly.
Does it, because in London you shared with Thibaut
and Nico, my brother.
And Nico and Jan?
Yeah.
And did you find that you had an effect on each other's work?
I mean, I take too much space to tell you that.
Did you influence each other?
I don't know if we influenced, but we always exchanged, for sure. I was always very keen on getting opinion from Thibaut and from my brother, who also both are very different people with different opinions. So like when I would have to gauge whether I should take on a project, when I wouldn't be able to make the choice for myself, what I would be like in Tintin, when you have Snowy, the evil Snowy and the angel Snowy on each side of your shoulder, then it's a bit like that. You get more. There's more of a discussion. Your decision is more affected by a sound judgment and a concerted effort, and I think it's extremely valuable when when you do freelance, because you don't have the support of a company. I mean, with you guys we do, because it's always been great to talk to you and to ask you your opinions, and it never felt like you were supporting the financial aspect of it, which is good. When I had misgivings, you'd be like, look, if you're worried about it doing that, it could do that, don't take it. And then I would make my decision based also on that judgment. Studio for me is good for that. I have so much stuff that I need a space on my own, and it maybe doesn't look very professional at the tender age of 36 to have a messy studio, but then that's where I make the work. That's not necessarily, I'm not a shop, you know.
Is your house messy or
No, my house is tidy.
I don't think
I'm a
it's that
tidying
messy.
freak at home.
It's not that bad.
We'll take some photos, but I don't think it's that messy.
And just going back to your brother Nico,
Yeah.
for people that don't know, has animated a lot of your work over the
Yeah.
years, and animation is a really big part of what you do.
For sure, yeah.
Have you animated any of the paintings yet?
We haven't, but we had a show in Lyon, was it earlier this year, I think? And he made an animation that, to me, was painted. He did it, so it was his painting style, but I could totally see correlation. It's something I'd love to do. I think it could look fantastic, even if it is just painting the landscapes and then having an animated character on them.
Yeah, we're just saying quite subtle.
I wanted to do that for a book, and actually I think for an animation would be really nice.
Yeah.
Because a lot on the paintings, a lot of the characters are sort of this scale, and I think that if you had these huge landscapes and then tiny characters animated, you could create something
Yeah,
quite
just
nice.
like branch waving or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean we've noticed a really big increase in the demand for animation from a.
It's the way the medium evolved as well.
And it's not necessarily like big complex animation. It can be really subtle, you know, the kind of GIF style animation.
Yeah.
But it really just adds another level to people's work.
Which is weird. I mean, I can see it for some work, but for me, one of the things that I like in illustration is the idea of that you animate the illustration in your head also. When I see an image that I really like from like Sampé, Steinberg, people like that, or William Stig, I just see it and then I, not consciously, but I think somehow, depending on how good the drawing is, it has its life.
Well, because it's like a story, and you're filling in the blanks.
Exactly, like when you're reading a book, you're painting a picture and you're describing the things with your mind. But that being said, I absolutely love doing it with my brother, and it adds something. I just find it funny that, like you say, it seems to be something of a necessity now.
Well, I mean, I with my commercial head on,
Yeah.
you know, brands want content, right?
They do.
And it's that added level of engagement. And from a really simple point of view, if a client is looking at the stats and saying, all right, well, animated things get more engagement than static things, then then that something as simple as that could lead to the demand.
For sure.
I do think, I mean, there's obviously some styles that lend itself to animation than others.
For sure.
But I just stand by the fact that it can really lift a piece of work to another level, and just sort of help with that engagement.
Yep.
Well, one thing I'm interested in knowing a bit more about. I mean, we said at the start these paintings here are huge.
Yeah. Not big enough there yet.
You did a show in New York last year where the paintings were tiny.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I saw that one.
And I had no idea. Tom came back from New York and said, "Do you realise how big these are?"
They are tiny.
What I find interesting is that when you see work on Instagram on a phone screen, there's absolutely no idea of scale.
Yeah.
So that's not coming across, but you're clearly playing with it and finding it interesting.
Funny, yeah, that's a really interesting thing, because I've been thinking about it a lot more with painting, because there's obviously a physical aspect to the painting, and it's all about semantics to me. If I take a close-up of the character or the detail of the painting, it's an image, it's a very Instagram-friendly image, and what you see is the image. But there's a few painter or artists that are very good in their own domain, but that sort of utilize the scene a lot more. So you would, instead of seeing the detail of those people on the boat, you would take a picture from further away, you would see the mess of the studio, you would see the fact that it's on a canvas, on the wall.
You have more of the surroundings.
And it's
scale.
more about like I guess, the romantic aspect of how the image is created. You know, when you look at those pictures from artists that you like, it's the story around the work. And I think in the Instagram now, more and more, I see, I guess with illustration, you see more the work, and then with photography and painting, you can use the story around it.
I think people are very interested in the craft.
Yeah.
And seeing it. Interesting, we've had people get in touch with us and ask for if they can buy the original with a vector illustration.
Nice.
Which is kind of a, you know, it's kind of crazy, but I guess it's not, because if you're not in this world, then you perhaps wouldn't realise that doesn't exist as an original.
But have you noticed actually that some of your illustrators and some illustrators who might have had a vector style then moved on to doing physical painting or drawings, replicating
So
that style?
Tom stands today.
Yeah, but that's really interesting as well.
So
So it's almost like reverse engineering. It's like you've worked out how to do it digitally, and then you've worked backwards to work out how to do it.
It's almost like
by
the
hand.
digital one that might have been before the most difficult to achieve for someone that was old school is now the way we start, and then actually going back to the physical world is more of a challenge.
Yeah, I guess because we're so au fait with digital products and tools, they're the natural ones we pick up and we gravitate to.
Yeah,
and you have to teach yourself the classics.
exactly, which is hard.
Yeah.
And from again, from the commercial point of view,
Yeah.
are you kind of keen to keep the painting side of your work away from the commercial world? You know, if for example, the painting behind you is of a beautiful sort of seascape with a yacht. If a brand came along and said, "Oh, we want to put our logo on that and sell holidays," would you would you be willing, or is it something you want to kind of keep as your art, as it were?
I've not really given that much thought about it, because so far the opportunity hasn't presented itself. But I think in general, commercially, I'm keen to still do work with people, but depends on the people and depends on the project.
Agreed, yeah.
If it's for a cause that I enjoy, I'll probably be happy to lend the work to it. But it's difficult and different because it also exists within a certain industry that's completely parallel to the commercial world, like galleries and things like that. So it's how these two work together.
Yeah.
With drawing, in a way, compartmenting is easier, because then I can have the painting for the galleries and the drawing for the commercial.
Yeah.
So far, it's how it's happened. But I'm as interested in both. You know, I love drawing as much as I love painting. It's just that one, I guess, is more
Commercially appealing.
Yeah, but which is weird, because a lot of your illustrators who do cleaner lines do very constructed landscapes and scenes, which I guess would be more similar to these. And the more minimal drawing that I do, to me, seems to be less trendy or popular.
Yeah, I mean, I think certainly in terms of subject matter, we have a lot of briefs and a lot of commissions which involve landscapes, beautiful scenery.
Evasion.
Well, exactly, escapism.
Fair enough.
Yeah, they get it on packaging, all sorts, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you a couple of things. I mean, we've mentioned a few names today, but I'm interested to know who out there at the moment you really admire, whose work you follow closely, who you think is doing interesting things at the moment.
I'm so wrapped up in my thing that I tend not to look. To be fair.
You look. 'Cause
No, I mean, yeah, of course I see stuff. I really dislike that, and then my friends send me stuff, and then with all this algorithm and stuff, you get things pushed to you. But it's people usually whose work I met in another way.
Yeah.
Like Christoph Niemann, that I've met a few times and I really enjoy as a person. I think his work is consistently great. My friend Thibaut, Jan, I love their work, and Olympia Zagnoli, that I've known now for a few years, really like her work. Malika, Inès de Longevia, the Parisian painter. We have mutual acquaintances, and I think she is very smart about the way she she uses that semantic I was talking about and photographing herself in the studio, and but not in a tacky way, in a way that is very tasteful and is a nice consequence of her work, or vice versa. But I think I'm not keeping as close an eye on the art world as I should.
Well, as I know a lot of photographers who kind of purposefully never look at other photographers' work. I know designers who don't look at other designers' work.
Well, there's probably an element of that, but also I think I'm quite wrapped up in doing the work, and then when I look at Instagram all the time, but I don't, it's more of this depressing, passive, you're being pushed images, but I look more at pictures of surf or painting than.
The problem I have is I see work I like all the time, but then remembering the people's names.
Oh, that's hard as well. That's very hard.
Impossible.
But in terms of inspiration online, like for years and years I've been more interested in odd stuff. If I see a picture of like a Japanese biscuit or like an odd shape in a salad, those are the images that I would take and put in a library, not necessarily the work of illustrators.
And how do you physically sort of file things away? Do you keep physical things, or do you take photographs, or do you?
I've got
stuff?
Image libraries.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're full of like old paintings and photographs of weird stuff more than illustrations by people. Which is odd because I'm fairly passionate about illustration, but I think contemporary speaking, and because it's my commercial practice as well, and work is work, so you don't necessarily want to look at work when you're not at work. I would tend to look more at books and things like that.
I was going to say, are you a big collector of books? Yeah,
huge. I read a lot of comic books. I'm more into comic books artists than I am in illustrators in a way. In France we have a lot of bande dessinée, which is like comic books, mangas and stuff.
And that's something that you've been into since you were a kid, and you've
exactly. Yeah.
And when you look at your work, and there's always a strong narrative to your illustration. That's kind of subliminally taken from the.
Yeah, and I'd love to do actually a graphic novel. That's something that I'm working on. I've got the script, the editor, but I've not done the work yet. So that's a bit of an annoying thing because I want to get on with that.
We do questions?
Yeah, so we asked people on Instagram and Twitter if they had any questions for you.
Right.
Some are better than others.
Okay.
I'm not gonna name names, but yeah, we'll just go for
shout out.
Shell Thompson.
Nice.
Who's your dream client? Shell asks.
Currently, that changes your frame of mind, but there's a few dream clients like Parley for the oceans, WWF, Greenpeace. I think in general people that work with a client, but I'm lucky that I get to work with some of my dream clients on a small scale. Like I'm doing work with Fondation Abbé Pierre, who helps homeless people, or Secours Populaire, people like that I'd love to work with. Brand-wise, I don't really know. I don't know. Vitra is nice.
Let me just, I've locked my phone now.
We met, he's more of a typographer, but he goes into prisons in Glasgow and runs art classes.
That's amazing.
And he says it's one of the most rewarding and scariest things he's ever done.
That's the thing. I think when you think about dream clients, it's not necessarily clients, and that sounds very cliche, but I guess utilizing my work to make me feel like I'm making a difference, but it's very cheesy, but I think it's quite true.
No, I know that ethics has become a big part in your decision-making process.
Yeah, but it's hard because I also know that you can't be perfect, like I still take the plane that make me feel absolutely awful, but I'm like, I still have to, there's jobs where I have to go and do a show there, and like I can't do the show and not be there. It's just, or maybe in the future I won't be there, but I think that might be a shame. So I try to be as good as possible, but you can never be perfect. And I think it's the biggest social decisions we're going to have to make is how do we accept that we can't be 100% perfect and still not hate each other.
And that's a shame, isn't it? I think it's a shame when somebody tries to make little differences in their lives.
Yeah.
and they do go out their way to try and make a bit of a difference, and then somebody will pick them up on something else.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you tend to you can never do. It's never good enough.
No.
When you see even Greta Thunberg get slammed for stuff, you're like, okay, guys,
You can't win.
You can't win that.
So a couple more questions from Instagram. What's your favourite thing about being an illustrator, and do you still enjoy it?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, drawing for a living, it doesn't get any more free than that.
Who is your favourite artist from Nantes?
Whew, that's tough.
Can't say so.
No, I think my friend Jan, because he was living in Nantes, so I'll consider him like a Nantes illustrator. But I'm working more and more with Nantes, so I'm doing back and forth there, and I'll keep a closer eye on the scene.
And there's a question here: how do you manage to stay sane with so many followers and so much going on? I mean, I think we talked about that a bit.
Friends and family.
Yeah.
and
stepping away from the phone.
Yeah, stepping away from the phone, and just painting is good for that, because you're standing doing your work and you can compartmentalize a bit more, which is nice.
Before we finish up, have we been talking long enough?
We have been talking for 40 minutes.
Wowzer.
Because it's 2019 and we're about to clock over into a new decade.
Yeah.
Have you worked out your albums of the decade?
My album of the decade, wow. No, I have not actually, but I can get back to you on that.
Get back to us on this.
Yeah,
I'm asking
for sure.
everyone,
I will.
Film of the decade, book of the decade. I think I've maybe an idea of book for you.
Well, what's your favourite album at the moment?
Do I even listen to albums?
I don't know.
No, it's more playlists at the moment. It's sad. I don't know. I listen to a lot of Velvet Underground, Flavien Berger, contemporary guy. I really like his work. Some Hoy Blues as well. I'll get back to you on more specifics.
Has the music you listen to changed from when you moved to London to Paris, or is
No,
it's the same?
no. I've always
That's
loved
a
music,
constant.
and we've always, with my brother in the studio, we've always listened to a hell of a lot of different stuff, which is why maybe I'm flat on the idea of a proper album.
Which city has the better music scene, London or Paris?
Oh, it's London. It's always been London, hasn't it? I mean, Paris is fantastic. There's a lot going on, but I think historically London has always had a different aura with music.
Last time we were here, which would have been last summer, it was music night.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it was. Is it?
Oh
July?
yeah, 21st of June.
Of June.
Yeah,
And
that's
it was-
amazing.
We had to leave,
Just as it was warming up.
and it
No.
looked like it was going to be immense.
Oh, it's so good, man. We
Yeah.
had a few friends from London visiting on that specific night this year, and they like, what is going on?
So for people who don't know, explain what happens in.
21st of June, which is the longest day of the year. Everybody can play music in the streets, in bars, in front of their house, and so you have bands, amateur or more professional, everywhere in the streets of every city in France. So
Ian, one of our other illustrators who lives in Paris, he said it gets exceptionally messy.
it does, but in a good way. I mean, there's the odd fight and stuff, but it's such a nice energy. You walk everywhere. There's a street party, people like serving you beers and sausage wherever. It's awesome. I love it.
Yeah, it's a shame we missed that.
Yeah, I don't
You'll be
remember.
back next year, guys.
Yeah, like,
Let's do it together.
Yeah.
So that's our conversation with Jean. We really hope you enjoyed that as much as we did recording it.
It was really nice just to sit in a room with Jean and talk face to face rather than over email, which is what we do a lot on projects all the time, and just to see how he's evolved from a commercial illustrator to a painter.
Yeah, we've worked with a lot of our artists for the best part of a decade now, and it's lovely to see how their lives have changed, and I think those relationships that we have with them are a big reason why we do what we do. After we were finished recording, we sat down, had a beer and a proper catch-up, and saw probably the biggest rat I've ever seen.
Although there was a bit of a discussion as well in French and English as to whether it was a rat or a beaver. We really weren't sure.
If you enjoyed our podcast, you can subscribe to wherever you normally get your podcasts from.
And if you'd like to know more about Handsome Franklin Artists, check out our website, handsomefrank.com.
Thanks very much for listening.
Handsome Frank. Handsome Frank.